Hi, my name is Sonia, and today I will be transforming Barbie and Ken from their typical selves. This is the ones I used in field report number 6, into a more street rebel version of Barbie and Ken. Taking inspirations from Youngblood here. At least I believe that's him. And Miley Cyrus. When they went through that phase of their careers. Well, Youngblood is still in that phase, anyways. Beginning with what Barbie represents originally, Barbie, as we've discussed in class, represents a range of ideas of cultural symbols, like idealized beauty and perfection, with her long legs, blue eyes, blonde hair, small waist, big boobs, just overall like what the idealized beauty standard should be for women. She also represents the power, empowerment, and possibility for women, especially in the modern day and age. With the wide range of careers that she has as a pilot, doctor, nurse, lawyer, anything you want to be, Barbie is. She also represents consumerism and materialism with her lavish lifestyle, also with the broad amount of like the stuff that you can buy from Barbie in general. She also represents diversity and inclusion, except for here I only had the Barbies from when I was 6 years old, so that's fun. There's and generally she's also just a cultural icon who has also have been receiving a lot of controversy and criticism for promoting gender stereotypes and a very narrow view of beauty, which is why today I decided to take my Barbie and switch her over to a more street rebel style alongside with Ken, which I decided to add on because I had him and I decided to have fun with that too. But what is a street rebel culture and why does it exist? Well, it refers to a broad and dynamic set of subcultures that emerge as a form of resistance in the mainstream commercial and traditional societal norms. It's often associated with youth movements, counterculture, and urban environments where alternative values and identities are expressed. At its core, street rebel culture emphasizes individuality, nonconformity, and rebellion against societal expectations. It's basically an anti-establishment, which is a resistance to authority and conformity, an expression of identity where they value authenticity instead of whatever social norms are accepted. Priding themselves on being authentic and true to themselves, often, like I just said, rejecting superficiality associated with mainstream culture. And there's also often a DIY aesthetic, which you will see in my video. If my grandmother saw my sewing skills in this video, she would scream. Where basically it's creating your own clothing, art, music, a way to express yourself and who you are. And there's a lot of subcultures and aesthetics associated to it. Punk, hip-hop, there's the skateboarding culture, graffiti that's also associated with this. There's also a big rejection of consumerism, which I will do the comparison with Barbie later. Where it's also very anti-capitalist, subversion of mainstream products, and like I said earlier, it also gives the freedom to express, and basically has helped a lot of activism. If you take Blink-182, for example, American Idiot, where they recently during a concert said, "I'm not a part of the MAGA agenda," which ironically surprised a lot of Republicans, but that's another story. it's basically, it helps create with the freedom of being able to express oneself and the individuality. Street rebel culture frequently intersects with activism, especially in the area of civil rights, with anti-authoritarian movements like LGBTQ plus rights, racial justice, and environmental issues, and as well lately with the Palestinian protests that have been going on to help the Palestinians be able to regain their territory. Finally, since I also kind of threw Ken in here last second, I also wanted to go over what Ken symbolizes and represents in popular culture, which is traditional masculinity. With Barbie, he's a supportive role, and as of lately, he's been changing the notions of masculinity, taking on more diverse roles. As I said before, he's a supportive role to Barbie, which usually it's the reverse. Barbie's usually the supportive role for and women are the supportive role for their male counterparts in real life. He also represents superficiality and consumerism as Barbie does. He redefines masculinity and inclusivity with the broader skin tones, hairstyles. And he also depicts a very romantic gender and changes the gender dynamics, which is very interesting. He basically comes to symbolize both the traditional and evolving ideals of masculinity, which is pretty interesting because Barbie does the same thing a little bit with the femininity, but also while also very pushing hard on the gender stereotypes on beauty and etc. Okay, so by now you've seen me hack off Barbie's hair with a pair of scissors, add eyeliner. I took a marker just to add on black eyeliner and a black lipstick, add color to her hair, basically changing the perfection of Barbie into imperfections, which ties into why I chose to compare Barbie with a more street rebel culture. And why I did that is because street rebel culture and Barbie culture represent two distinct yet often intersecting sets of values, aesthetics, and social dynamics that each reflect on different ideals of identity, rebellion, and societal norms. As mentioned before, Barbie basically represents the pursuit of conventional beauty, success, and material wealth, while increasingly reflecting on values of empowerment, inclusivity, and aspiration, which is often a symbol of mainstream femininity and the idealized standard of living, which basically, in other words, says that it's what's expected of women and femininity in the modern era, the everyday life. Whereas street rebel culture represents freedom, resistance, and authenticity. It's about rejecting the norms, embracing individualism, and defining one's own identity outside of the social expectations. Embracing imperfection, subversion, rebellion, often as an act of self-liberation, meaning that it's okay that you don't live in a picture-perfect world, and we're not supposed to be. And comparing the two, they both have different versions of idolized beauty, whereas we see with Barbie, blonde hair, blue eyes, long legs, perfect hair, perfect life, perfect house, perfect everything. In contrast, like it sets an unrealistic standard of beauty for young women and girls. In contrast to street rebel culture, which celebrates individuality and rejects this mainstream beauty standard, valuing imperfection or uniqueness instead of conformity. So, like, for me, you can see clearly in this video, I am not a Barbie-sized girl. And for me personally, it helps me embrace the fact that I'm not perfect. It is what it is, and the world's not perfect, and that's okay. There's also the consumerism versus anti-consumerism, where Barbie culture is deeply tied with this, where products and appearances define value and success. And like the social norm today is that if you don't make a lot of money and you don't own like a Lamborghini or something, you're failing at life. Whereas street rebel culture often critiques this materialism, valuing personal expression and authenticity, and an anti-capitalist attitude instead. Also valuing like connection more than anything, which I find personally very important. So I guess you could say I do have a little bit more bias towards the street rebel culture. There's also a difference in gender and identity representation. Whereas Barbie in her earlier years, reinforced traditional gender roles and a particular kind of femininity, she now does obviously have more of a brighter career range, as well as a diverse range with different skin tones and inclusion, etc. But street rebel culture from the get-go was like that. It promotes gender fluidity, nonconformity, and it challenges the stereotypical gender expectations. So, as in the first picture I've showed you of my field report number 6, it's completely it would be completely normal to, like, with Barbie being on the couch doing basically what a man does, and Ken doing the housework or something like that. It doesn't matter. There's also the aspirational versus the rebellious, where Barbie represents an aspiration towards a perfect, glamorous life, while street rebel culture is about rejecting those aspirations in favor for a self-defined and, just like I said before, just a life that you're happy with living, that you just enjoy what you want to enjoy. So, like, and a perfect example of this in The Perfect Day is with the millennials changing housing, where everything has to be white, gray, beige, and everything has to be perfect in its perfect spot. Whereas a lot of Gen Z are coming into the housing market, and we're just going, we don't want that. We kind of just paint the ceiling orange and just be yourself type deal. And in Barbie's world is one of polished perfection and idealism, kind of like these millennial homes, while street rebel culture thrives on more of the gritty, real-world context where imperfections are embraced and celebrated, like that orange ceiling that a lot of Gen Zs have been doing for some reason. It's more about just enjoying life as is instead of having everything perfect all the time. Now you are currently seeing me ironically using a gender stereotype of women being able to sew, which I kind of do, but let's just say my grandmother would be rolling in her grave with the job I did right now. But yeah, that gender stereotype of women being able to sew and make clothes and do stuff like that, to make the more street rebellious aesthetic clothing for Barbie is kind of ironic in this instance, as it kind of plays into both being able to express oneself through clothing, but also using the gender stereotype of women being able to make clothes in a weird way. One thing I haven't really talked about yet is how street rebel culture and can intersect, and how street rebel culture challenges the traditional masculine ideals that Ken represents, even though Ken has lately been changing and challenging those notions to a more progressive type. Basically, it just challenges everything by saying it's okay for meant to cry, to just be yourself, to be able to feel, to want to like what you like, putting, like me later on putting mascara on Ken, that's perfectly fine, because makeup doesn't have a gender. It's just a form of art, and it's a way to express yourself, which is what street rebellion culture would want you to do, whereas Ken, I highly doubt would ever wear makeup, although don't look at the Barbie movie, because obviously actors wear makeup. That's a different story. But it's also not seeing Ken as a supportive role here. It's putting Barbie and Ken on an equal platform where it doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, non-binary, transgender. It doesn't matter. Everybody is equal or should be equal in our world. And like Barbie, Ken represents consumerism, and we all know, I already explained how street rebel culture challenges consumerism. So sorry, I had to cut myself off there. There was somebody shoveling at my door. But yeah, as I was saying, rebel culture challenges consumerism. Like I mentioned with Barbie, that's something I don't want to go over all over again. But it also challenges, it also embraces the romantic aspect I think Ken has. And the gender dynamics, where Ken is, like I said, a supportive role to Barbie. Street rebel culture puts them, like I said, would put them idealistically equally. But also I love how Ken has a more romantic side to him, which would be seen in rebel culture, that it's okay to show those emotions of not obsession, but romance and just love, and just being able to express those feelings that Ken can do. Like we see in the Barbie movie, that scene where Ken's like, oh, I kind of want to stay over, like boyfriend, girlfriend, and Barbie's just like, what? It's something that's really interesting to me. It's fascinating. I guess in the end, what I'm trying to say is that I enjoy what Barbie represents and Ken represents with these idealistic life expectations. I have them for myself, and I'm sure everybody has some version of what the perfect life would be, with the perfect house, perfect car, perfect family. Which I've even said so in some of my field reports, where I mentioned I had a dream where I was writing in my own, like, mansion. Everything was clean, and I heard children running in the background, and it was just perfect, everything. But also it brings me back, the street rebel aspect of it brings me back to reality, where it assures me that I might never get that perfect lifestyle, but that's okay, because as much as the perfect lifestyle is beautiful, there is also beauty in a simplistic lifestyle, a life where you don't need the material things to be considered successful or wealthy. You just need to be yourself and live the life that makes you happiest. And if that's with having black, blue, and green hair, as I did to poor Barbie here, with tons of tattoos, which did not stay because I used erasable markers, or whatever you feel like doing, whatever you feel like wearing, whatever colors you want to paint your house, just as long as it makes you happy in the end. It doesn't matter how you look and anything. It doesn't matter in the end. And I find both cultures they have their purpose in each a different way, and it's so fascinating. And actually, after doing this project of changing Barbie into this street rebel culture aesthetic, kind of gets me hoping for the future that maybe Barbie could take on a more street rebel like attitude, where we can see more diversity, with Barbie maybe even wearing a kifa for representing like women from Palestine, Muslim women, Jewish women, women from India, women from Japan, because I don't think I've ever seen an Asian Barbie or so quote unquote Indian Barbie or a Palestinian Barbie, or I know we've seen darker skinned Barbies, but we need, I think it kind of points out that there's room for improvement here. Might even be able to see non-binary Barbie, or maybe like a Ken with boobs. Who knows? We just aspiring to be anything, like just giving more of like more realistic aspect to it. You can even notice tidbits of rebel culture in the art that I've created with Barbie and Ken through giving them tattoos, which is something even I would willing to do. Unconventional clothing with the holes, that's considered unprofessional. The colored hair, I've always wanted to dye my hair weird colors, but because it's deemed unsocial, socially unacceptable, and it's harder to get a job with colored hair, it's considered unprofessional. I haven't been able to do it really gets you thinking. And in the end, I think with this project, what I want really for people to watch this video and take away from is that, yes, it's okay to have an idolized version of how life should be. It's okay, like, to aspire to have the mansion, have the perfect life, perfect career, perfect partner, to look perfect all the time and everything. But we also have to remember that that isn't what reality is. Nobody is perfect, as much as we aspire to be. And material things are temporary. What will last is being your authentic self, and that's why I think rebel culture and putting Barbie in this rebel culture scenario really symbolizes how it's okay to be both, really. To want the material, but also having to remind yourself that just being yourself is enough. Being authentic to who you are is enough. And I find a lot of society is coming to terms with that, especially with Gen Z, and even Gen Alpha. We're starting to see it a little bit. And as I said previously, I hope to see it more in maybe even Barbie culture. It's truly fascinating, and yeah, I can keep going on with examples of this, and it's truly fascinating. We can even see aspects of rebel culture in the Barbie movie, which is something I just wanted to add real quick. With weird Barbie, being that she looks a little bit like the doll I have. Yes, you still see aspects of Barbie herself, but the weird hair, the unconventional looks, the fact that they just call her Weird Barbie to her back into her face, as they completely always say, and the fact that she's so comfortable with herself, and being able to show stereotypical Barbie that it's just okay to be who you want to be. You don't have to fit a stereotype or anything to exist. Eventually guiding stereotypical Barbie to go into the real world and discover that for herself. Even Ken, we see when he goes to the real world, a change in his demeanor, being exposed to the patriarchy, how he changes as well, and how in the end both parties realize that just being themselves is enough, and that's incredible. And it just shows that rebel culture and Barbie culture almost go hand in hand in a weird way, because in the Barbie movie, Barbie culture would have to be the patriarchy, the idolization of what a man could be whatever they want in Barbie land. You really see it with the Kens wanting to be more independent and stuff. But then coming to the fact that just being themselves is enough at the end. It's a whole deep dive that I would have to do and rewatch the Barbie movie for, which I do not have time for. In the end, to get this full transformation from Barbie and Ken as the original state to the street revel culture aesthetic version of them, took me about 30 minutes, 45 minutes, mostly due to the sewing and having to cut and needing scissors. And it was a really fun and interesting project, and got me to explore a different type of culture, one that opposes media culture and popular culture and stuff like that, especially Barbie culture. And just kind of bring them both together in some weird mashup way, in a meaningful way as well, just to show that it's okay to have dreams and aspire them, but we also need to be realistic as we're living up to these aspirations. And it really just, it gets you thinking about a lot of other different things. But yeah, all in all, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you, Professor Strangelove, for an incredible semester. And I'm just gonna leave the rest of this video. That's probably just gonna be me finishing up, getting the dolls all dressed, and then showing you a real quick picture of the before and after of Barbie and Ken. Anyways, thank you again. Thank you again for the great semester.